This project came to light to us because it appeared that the SFMTA seemed rather anxious to do this without any community input whatsoever. And we raised objection to the fact that there was no review, there was no public data that was provided to justify such a project. So we raised an objection to Ed Riskin, the director of MTA, and also had extensive discussions with the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition and our membership about this issue. The Bicycle Coalition essentially supports the MTA in this plan because it brings project money to MTA to implement, and the city, a desperately cash-strapped city, is going to glom onto anything that's going to produce some input of financial funds that they don't have now. I had suggested to Neil Patel of the Bicycle Coalition that they think about instead of putting this traffic on Oak Street, to go an alternate route that would involve going onto Baker Street north to Hayes Street, making a right turn at a stop sign, or actually it's a traffic light there, and go down 3 blocks on Hayes, crossing to Visadero where there's a traffic light with a countdown timer, up to Scott where there's a stop sign, and a right turn there to go down 2 blocks across Fell and Oak where there are traffic lights. And so there, at issue are the fact that there are various traffic engineering principles that are being violated in the proposal by the Bicycle Coalition. One is you don't mix up substantially different volumes of, you don't mix substantially different speeds of traffic on the same thoroughfare if you can avoid it. And clearly that's not being done here.
However, they're proposing to put a physical buffer. So
a physical buffer, but it has problems. The problem of people who have driveways there backing out or driving out across that so-called barrier. So the barrier has to be basically very permeable in order for that to happen.
They're proposing to have the hit posts in those areas where the entrance to businesses are, and then where there are no curb cuts, they would have the physical separation.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a combination of various ways of protecting.
Of attempting to protect. I've maintained it does very precious little actually to offer any protection. Indeed, even scarier is what I see out there now, which are people using Oak Street, and they're doing the craziest things I've ever seen on a bicycle, of anybody do on a bicycle. They're riding in the traffic lanes, not at the right-hand side of the road, as California law dictates they should. They're doing it without riding with helmets.
Well, actually, there's a law that says you can, if you're riding at the speed of traffic, you can ride in the lane of traffic.
I don't believe it's quite that. It'll just be a matter of time before somebody gets killed. And I hate to be the one that'll have to go back and say, we told you so.
I think cyclists prefer to take Fell Street and Oak Street because it has a lower grade, and there are no stop signs, so cyclists can continually go through.
Well, let's make sure we understand exactly what we're talking about here. There is at Broderick on Oak Street no stop sign. Okay, there is a traffic light at the Visadero, and no matter how you slice it, bicycles are going to have to stop when the light changes, and it will. I mean, car traffic can more easily attain a pace, and that's much harder for bicyclists to do. Secondly, I wouldn't call the less than 1 degree slope from Divisadero to Scott a hill. I mean, and likewise, even coming the other way, if you're westbound out of the Wiggle to Hayes Street, there's an incline from fell up to Scott Street. It's about a 2.5 degree slope. And I maintain that anybody in San Francisco who is on a bike who cannot go up a 2.5 degree slope has no business being on a bike.
But if there is a existing street that doesn't have a grade like that, why should we favor allowing cars preference on that street rather than cyclists? If there's the ability to have like an 8-year-old from an 80-year-old person be able to use that route.
Yeah, the reason you don't is that the street was built as a major artery to connect the western half of the city to the eastern half of the city. There are about 125 to 150 cars a minute coming down Oak Street during rush hour.
Okay, so how do you persuade cyclists not to use Oak Street and rather use Page?
Safety. Our top 3 priorities on this whole issue are safety, safety, and safety. That's what this is about. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I want to see people use bikes. I want to see them, slow down and see the city around them that you can do on a bicycle. But when you put it in the wrong place, you're just asking for trouble. It's just foolish.
But as I said, like, cyclists are using Oak Street currently, and it's dangerous. So putting in the physical separation will make it safer, more safe than it is now. But
then when you do that, then you also remove all the parking that's on either one side of the street or the other, depending on how they actually implement it. And then you're telling those people they're out of luck. They have to sacrifice their interests for the interests of a couple of hundred bicyclists who want to ride down Oak Street.
Yeah, well, actually, I think it's like 500,000 cyclists every year ride down Oak Street.
I don't think so.
That's what the MTA has.
That number is impossibly high. 500,000 cyclists, 500,000 cyclists. I don't think so.
They have counters.
No, they're counting of the annual census, if you will, of the Bicycle Coalition and MTA is a flawed methodology that counts people repeatedly at different points in their travels.
We have electronic bike counters out on, I think, Fell, and we actually have a modem attached to them that tells us what data it's collecting. We had over 500,000 bicycle trips that were captured from that modem just in 2011.
Do you feel like the city has a moral obligation to protect the lives of those who choose a mode of transportation that doesn't pollute, does not contribute to climate change, and does not, for the most part, endanger the lives of others, rather than giving priority to provide a free place for people to store their private property in public places? An object which has the capability of killing and injuring others while also contributing to numerous environmental ills.
All right. Well, you've just asked the question, when did you stop beating your grandmother? That's a loaded question. That really doesn't describe what's going on. It's motorists and taxpayers who pay for the public infrastructure, such as roads. And it's the city's obligation, it's the state's obligation, it's the federal government's obligation to come up with public policy implementations that meet the needs of the most number of people across the spectrum, and not one group at the expense of another. And that's the problem with the Bicycle Coalition's approach to this. Their agenda is, frankly, to do what they want at the expense of automobiles, as if somehow automobiles are evil. They're not.
But isn't it the cyclists' safety and lives that are being
which they are responsible for
versus the people?
No, absolutely not. Safety is as safety does. You get that result by practicing it, and whether you have it in a separated bike lane, whether you have sharing the road, whatever. It's really up to the people using the transportation facilities.
But also the facility creates a safe or unsafe condition. And,
If
a lot
it's
of times-
designed properly or not.
Well,
yes.
currently the designs of our streets favor the thoroughfare of motorists rather than the safety of cyclists. And we need to invest more in the cyclist infrastructure.
There are well over 300,000 vehicles registered in the city, and that's a far superior fraction, and they're the ones who pay for, frankly, the roads that we're talking about.
Well, actually, a lot of cyclists do own cars and
That's right.
do pay taxes like sales taxes and property taxes that do go to the roads. And if you look at Copenhagen and a lot of places in Europe, they have invested a lot in safe infrastructure and physically separated bike lanes. They have the lower numbers of injuries, and
let's
they have the 50%.
Let's talk about Amsterdam, because that's all where it's always thrown out. But it's in Copenhagen, it's in Amsterdam, it's in Vienna, it's in lots of places. They have roads for cars and roads for bicycles. Those are separated roads, and they are not mixed. And to do that requires the commitment of a lot more pavement. So if we're willing to widen the street to put in, quote, separated lanes so that these things aren't mixed and then, properly engineered, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would argue that all of the streets are unsafe, no matter if the traffic is fast or slow. Did you see that video of the man who was run over in Tenderloin? A car had the pedestrian had the green light crossing. Mm-hmm. The car was going probably 5 or 10 miles an hour and crossed and hit the guy, ran him over. It doesn't matter if the traffic is going fast or slow. It's the way our streets are designed currently. And this project will create a innovation in design, and it's a high visibility area, and if we could get something like this out there, I think it would be a benefit to everybody.
Well, as an attorney might say, that assumes facts, not in evidence. There's just nothing in traffic engineering that would substantiate that claim. So, we're going to HAIA will continue to advocate for this alternative that's both safe and efficient and effective. And if the city chooses to ignore us, so be it. But it's not like somebody hasn't said you're creating a problem that will be much more severe than the so-called help you're providing the people who are going to get hurt.